Welcome to HBNC's Cultural Diversity Training for Volunteers. We respectfully acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of Australia and pay our respects to elders, past and present. The goal of this training is to introduce volunteers like yourself to cultural diversity in our communities, and to help you increase your awareness and skills so you can be culturally aware when volunteering with others. In this training, we'll cover an introduction to diversity, cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, and cultural safety. So to start at the very beginning, what is cultural diversity? Cultural diversity means having a different mix of people from various cultural backgrounds. It can include differences and similarities in cultural or ethnic identity, that is, how we identify ourselves and how others identify us, language, country of birth, religion, heritage or ancestry, national origin, or race. This definition recognises that cultural diversity has multiple aspects. It includes both objective and subjective aspects of people's cultural background, and it includes cultural identity. Here in Queensland, 4.6% of residents are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Australia is a multicultural country, and all of our states have a diverse population. Here in Queensland, 22.6% of Queenslanders are born overseas. We also have a diverse ancestry. We also have a diversity of religion and beliefs. Now it's time for a little activity. What culture do you identify with? Where were you born? Where were your parents born? And do you identify with a religious belief or system? Here in Queensland, we know that volunteering is of great value. In fact, its value can be estimated at $117.8 billion, with 64% of Queenslanders volunteering in 2023. Volunteers from diverse backgrounds bring a broad range of skills, experiences and perspectives, making organisations and groups more resilient and productive. Supporting cultural diversity shows we value diversity as an asset and respect the different ways people choose to live their lives. What is cultural awareness? It involves understanding the differences and similarities between yourself and people from other countries or other culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, especially in terms of attitudes and values. An example could be the classic Aussie tradition of bringing a plate. Australians often get together with friends for a barbecue, where we have a custom of bringing a plate. This is seen as extremely rude and inhospitable by some other cultures, and it can be quite puzzling to newcomers. What other examples can you think of? The first step to cultural awareness is being aware of our own cultural bias. Cultural bias refers to the tendency to interpret and judge phenomena in terms of the distinctive values, beliefs, and other characteristics of the society or community to which one belongs. This sometimes leads people to form opinions and make decisions about others in advance of any actual experience with them. Cultural bias can lead us to assume that our own particular culture is the norm and other cultures are not. It may assume dominance or superiority of our own culture over other cultures. This is a natural human trait, and we all have it to a certain extent. Being aware of our own bias and learning about other cultures and their practices leads to cultural sensitivity and enables us to be more kind and respectful to others, especially when we are volunteering. What are some of your own biases that you can think of? So what is cultural sensitivity? Being culturally sensitive includes recognizing and being open-minded that other people may think, communicate, and act in ways that differ from your own. Take some time to make a list of all the things you think should be considered when volunteering and communicating with someone from another culture. While volunteering, you may come across cultural differences in greetings, eye contact, personal space, language, notions of time and time management, hierarchy or roles, and gestures. Take greetings, for example. In some cultures, it is considered impolite to shake hands or hug, especially if it is between a man and a woman. In some cultures, it is not common to give out or use first names, as it is seen as too informal. And in some cultures, it is considered normal to talk about yourselves and family before talking about formal matters. Eye contact can mean different things in different cultures. In Western culture, eye contact is often seen as a sign of respect and attentiveness. In some other cultures, the opposite is the case, where not using eye contact is used as a sign of respect. For example, in some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, eye contact is seen as disrespectful or even rude. Personal space, how close we stand to our colleagues, our friends, or strangers, varies widely between countries. Maintaining an appropriate amount of space is a crucial aspect of non-verbal communications. What constitutes culturally inappropriate could be seen as encroaching on someone's space, as well as keeping too much distance. In Western cultures, we tend to like more space. In Hispanic cultures, people stand closer. In Asian cultures, this can shift. It's best to observe the other person's cues and modify your behaviour accordingly. Contact or touching with other people is something we need to be culturally aware of. Here in Australia, we generally don't have contact with other people we are not familiar with. In Hispanic and some European cultures, however, touching can be seen as a way of communicating understanding. Where we have contact with a person also can communicate much. Gestures can vary between cultures as well. The thumbs up gesture, for example, in Middle Eastern countries is the same as giving someone the middle finger. In some Asian cultures, it is rude to point with the index finger. People at Disney are actually trained to gesture with 2 fingers to avoid this. In Brazil and the Middle East, the OK symbol is rude and means anything but OK. In Brazil, it refers to a body part. Volunteers may have different levels of English language proficiency. Some culturally sensitive things we can do when communicating include slowing down our speech, using clear language, and avoiding slang. We can also be understanding by listening carefully to others, including accounting for accents. Different cultures have different attitudes to time. For some cultures, like Pacific Islanders, time is quite flexible and it can be quite normal to arrive 30 minutes late. Arriving on time is seen as bad etiquette. Here in Australia, we value punctuality and expect people to be on time. But it's important to be culturally aware of other people's notions of time when volunteering, and to be understanding when plans may not go exactly according to your schedule. In Australia, if we agree to take on a task, we also commit to completing a task within a certain time frame. Some cultures are not used to scheduling time or prioritising work activities. When volunteering, it can be helpful to be clear about timeframes for tasks. In some countries, manual labour is seen as the lowest level of work in society, and volunteers from these cultures may not want to engage in certain jobs. In some cultures, it's inappropriate to question others. People may nod their head and agree out of a reluctance to say no, or that they don't understand something. Sorry business can impact on a person's ability to volunteer at times. Many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people mourn the loss of a family member by following traditional ceremonies and practices, often known as sorry business. An Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community may also conduct sorry business if a family or community member is ill or imprisoned, or to mourn the loss of a cultural connection to the land, which can be as painful as the loss of a loved one. Culturally significant days and celebrations can also be seen as a great opportunity for building understanding when volunteering with others and learning and sharing cultures. Some organisations allow workers to swap public holidays for another day that is more significant and meaningful for them. What cultural days do you observe or celebrate? For some volunteers, religious needs such as prayer time and fasting can impact on their availability to volunteer. Most organisations will provide suitable areas for prayer for those who pray at set times during the day. This could be in a private room or somewhere suitable outside. Some volunteers may only eat certain foods in accordance with their religion. Here in Australia, Islam is the second biggest religion. The majority of Australian Muslims are Sunni. Practicing Muslims will pray 5 times a day. Hinduism is the third largest religion in Australia after Christianity and Islam, followed by Buddhism. It's now time to showcase some of the cultures you may work alongside while volunteering. Being First Nations people, Indigenous Australians are at the very heart of our society. Many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and communities perceive volunteering differently to non-Indigenous people. Volunteering is often seen as more fluid, local and responsive to community needs, rather than structured, targeted and regular. When it comes to greetings in First Nations communities, respect is important. Indigenous people may refer to an elder as auntie or uncle, not as a relation but as a sign of respect. However, calling an elder auntie or uncle without permission or a pre-existing relationship may not be well received. When it comes to personal space, avoid standing too close to a person that you are unfamiliar with or who is of the opposite gender. This can make a person who is Indigenous feel uncomfortable or threatened. And for some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, avoidance of eye contact is customarily a gesture of respect. In some Indigenous cultures, extended periods of silence during conversations are considered the norm and are valued. Be cautious about using traditional languages unless you have an excellent understanding. In Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, more value is placed on family responsibilities and community relationships than on time, and a flexible approach to time is normal. Some non-verbal communication cues, like hand gestures and facial expressions, used by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have different meanings. Be mindful of the impacts of colonialism that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been through, including the loss of land and the stolen generations. When it comes to meetings, times can be flexible. Again, time is perceived differently in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, with more emphasis on family and community. Start conversations around who you are, not what you do. Older people are valued as elders in communities, including both females and males. However, many cultural practices are completed separately as women's business and men's business. For people from India, volunteering is approached through the concept of following one's dharma, or conscious duty. There is no word in the Hindu language for volunteering, so volunteering is thought of through the sense of doing right action. In India, the most popular types of volunteering are in the areas of environment conservation and health. When it comes to greetings in India, handshakes are common between same genders. Between genders, men and women do not normally shake hands or touch in public. People from India generally stand slightly further than an arm's length apart as the norm. People generally do not touch when speaking to each other. And generally, sustained eye contact is not the norm, especially between men and women. People from India communicate indirectly, and it can be common to tell people what they think they want to hear in order to be polite. Indian people generally have a relaxed attitude towards time. It is not considered rude to be late in social situations. However, punctuality is expected at work or meetings. The head wobble is a commonly used gesture that can mean yes. It is impolite to move or pass objects using feet. Avoid topics such as politics, religions, the caste system, and the Kashmir region. Arriving on time is important. It is common to engage in small talk before discussing more formal topics at meetings. Hierarchy is important. India is a generally patriarchal society. However, an increasing number of women are accessing higher education and working, especially in cities. In China, there are two phrases in Mandarin to describe volunteering. A worker who receives no money, or people who choose to do something without being forced. In China, handshakes and direct eye contact are common between the same and different genders. Touching is not common during conversations. When thanking or congratulating someone, a smile is used rather than touching. Chinese people tend to favour direct eye contact over indirect. Eye contact is considered polite. People from China speak in an indirect manner. In conversation, meaning may be implied or suggested as opposed to using direct words. Punctuality is valued, however, people and relationships are also extremely important in Chinese culture and may take priority over time frames. Pointing with the index finger is considered rude. It is more polite to use a flat palm when pointing or gesturing to something. It is rude to use feet to point at something or move an object. Whistling or snapping fingers at someone is also considered rude. Being punctual or early is valued. In meetings, it is polite to defer to the most senior person in the room to start the conversation. Small talk is made first, then formal matters. China is a patriarchal society. Women today are becoming more equal to men. However, women generally are responsible for housekeeping at home. Volunteering has a long history in the Philippines, with a cultural tradition of people in the community coming together to help each other. In the Philippines, verbal greetings are good in volunteer situations. A handshake is also common between same genders and between men and women. An arm's length of space while conversing is considered appropriate. Touching during a conversation is limited between men and women. Filipinos generally prefer direct eye contact over indirect. Filipinos generally communicate indirectly. Saving face is a very important concept in Philippine culture, where conflict is managed indirectly. It can be common to use a third party to relay bad news. Maybe can mean no, and yes can mean maybe. Filipinos tend to have flexible views on time with more emphasis placed on people and interaction than schedules. Punctuality is expected in formal situations. Pointing with fingers is considered rude. People will often point with their lips and head. Putting feet on furniture is considered rude in the Philippines. At meetings, small talk is made before discussing formal matters. If offered food and drink, it is polite to accept. The Philippines is a matriarchal society where women are highly regarded in politics, business, and the home. In general, what are some practices we have here in Australia? And what are some of your own practices? To finish, we'll take a look at cultural safety. What helps you to feel welcome somewhere? What does a culturally safe place to volunteer look and feel like to you? Cultural safety means everyone, regardless of culture, needs to be treated with respect, inclusion, transparent management, and health and safety policies. However, cultural safety is more than just being aware of other cultures and respecting all people. It is about creating a workplace or volunteer environment where everyone can examine their own cultural identities and attitudes and be open-minded and flexible towards people from cultures other than their own. Cultural safety also requires everyone to understand that their own values or practices are not always the best way to solve workplace problems. Cultural safety is supported not just through organisational culture and awareness. It is supported through policies and procedures, as well as human rights and anti-discrimination legislation. Volunteer organisations will have organisational policies and procedures which cover cultural safety and cultural awareness and protect people from discrimination of any kind. Organisations will also have a code of ethics and a code of conduct, which volunteers and staff will be required to know and sign. Here's some of the legislation protecting cultural safety and awareness. What policies does your organisation have around cultural safety and cultural awareness? So, in summary, it is important to remember that being culturally aware and culturally safe while we volunteer and in our everyday lives is an ongoing process and not just something that happens overnight. The more we practice something, the more it becomes a habit. Think of one thing you can practice based on what you have learnt today. Thank you for completing HBNC's Cultural Diversity Training for Volunteers.